Hi, my name's Jordan, and I wanted to create a quick video about the Chu Shong Tin lineage. That's a lineage I was a part of for a number of years, over a decade ago. It's actually a long time ago. But I can still see different Sifus around the world posting videos and doing a good job promoting the art and so forth. This video is not about critiquing any of that. Really kind of annoys me people critiquing from afar and doing all those things. This is actually just an explanation of my journey and things that I can reflect back on about the school now. And anyone who's part of those schools, and especially the Sifus, I would love you to watch this and feel free to comment or write back to me and so forth, just on my journey and how it relates back to the Choi Shunting lineage. Firstly, before I begin, I want to give a quick shout out to Sifu Susanna Ho, who taught me in Hurstville in Sydney, Australia, was a direct disciple of Choi Shong Tin. You'll see her in a number of videos. She normally does the translating and so forth. And also now one of her students, Sifu Mark. I remember training with Mark and I held the bag once, probably like my first or second week, and he punched into that, and it was awesome. It was like being hit by a truck, and I thought, I really want to learn this art. So I'm sure he's doing really well and probably hitting a lot harder. So let's sort of start there. There is a power generation that can come from certain students at that school, which is really great to witness, but you can't necessarily see it on video. It is something you need to feel and to sense that power. The other thing I like about it is if you look at a bunch of sort of Tai Chi videos and things, you can sometimes see, the students bouncing around and putting it on and stuff. I don't really see that from those guys, and I think that's great. They kind of keep it real. There is a Sifu is online, very popular. Mindful Wing Chun, I think it is, if that's correct. And he puts out a lot of videos, and everything he teaches seems really well aligned with what I was taught by Sifu Susanna. So there's this also great thing that they've got where the teachings themselves, they don't seem to be divergent in many, many different ways. They are sticking to what was taught by them, which is very fascinating because if you go one step up to Yip Man, it's very hard to find any one of his students that looks or teaches in a similar fashion, right? They're all very different. Even Yip Man's sons, each one of them's very different, but I won't get into that in this video. Um, another thing I thought was interesting about the school is and this goes for any internal school, so it's not a critique, right? And I've heard a lot of teachers say this. If you're going to go into the internal martial arts, such like a Tai Chi or even this style of Wing Chun, um, it would be great that you first did what they call a hard style martial art, like a karate or a taekwondo or boxing or kickboxing, right? And I completely that's my take on this. And I was really sort of fortunate that I'd done a bit of the karate and taekwondo before trying this on, um, because there's just pieces to it that they leave out, and I don't know if it's purposely done but I think more importantly, they're trying to teach this specific internal piece. And to teach that and then teach these other pieces and something else can all maybe be a bit too much. But I found with that, it can be very difficult to grasp. And I'm sure it would be even more difficult if you hadn't done another art in itself. So again, not a critique about this school. That's just the way the internal arts are. So if you're thinking about doing the internal arts and you haven't done any other art and you don't know how to throw a punch or a kick, it's best to go do those and then come back and check out what this internal thing's all about. And that's the other piece I wanted to talk about. There is some sayings that Choi Shon Ting has. Nimlik, or mind force, and his description of that. Now, I have no doubt that he discovered these internal forces and can use them. Um, and what I found, though, that even though he's tries his hardest over many years to pass that on to the student, pass it on to the student, and you can see via his interviews, he even changed his methodology every decade to try and speed it up or get a different way. Um, One of the things I noted that he is talking about, and if you are a student of that lineage, you really want to go look into this. And if you still can't figure it out, you probably want to take the videos that I'm going to put up and take those lessons, and it will be the bridging gap. Now, that thing is called the six harmonies. So if you don't know what that is, then you should go and Google it and have a look what it is. Now, here's the other thing, though, and that's why it's not a critique. If I look at Tai Chi, the six harmonies is something that's definitively not hidden. It's, you'd find it on their websites. You'll even find Tai Chi schools called Six Harmonies Tai Chi or Six Harmonies this or whatever it may be. So it's something that is put front and center. But if we look at the watering down of Tai Chi, and again, many arts, so don't want to be picking on them. There's some really great, fantastic Tai Chi practitioners, and I'm not not calling them out. I'm sure they would agree with me. There is this watering down, and that can be mainly because people do it for health. Again, nothing wrong with that. But if you don't understand the six harmonies, it's very difficult, actually not difficult, it's near impossible to understand the internals. That's simple, right? So the six harmonies equates to the internals. So, and if we have a look at this big brand, Tai Chi's monstrous, right? How big it is. And if they all know about the six harmonies, and you're not having those quality of students come through doing that, we have someone like Chu Shong Tin, who's not even, I don't speak Cantonese, but I don't think he's ever mentioned the word six harmonies. But he's doing his best to describe it. And some students get it, and then there's this whole swag of others who don't. So why do some get it and others don't? And that was the question I had. And I figured it all out, which is great. And I realized that this is it's a huge component of it. And in order to really understand it, something that's very interesting is people might be like, well, you gave them the answer. I don't need to take your course. If you have a look at how it's described, it doesn't teach you how to do it. It gives you the framework of what it's supposed to be, but there are specific techniques that need to be conducted in a homogeneous fashion that produces that. And that's the part where I noted, and this is probably a response to people who ask me questions as well, like, do you have Taigong in your school? And I asked them, what do you know about it? Where did you get it from? And they'll say, well, Choi Shon Ting, the first thing he teaches is Taigong, which is to, those who aren't familiar, it's to raise up the anus. And that's just one component. And then they talk about, I think it's Sing, which is a rising up of the spirit along the spinal column, spinal passage. Now, these techniques, they're Tai Chi techniques. Yeah. And so people are like, well, Choi Shong Ting used Tai Chi and Wing Chun and it's this and that. They might say things like that. No, you know why? I shouldn't even say they're Tai Chi techniques. These are internal techniques. And these are only two. And there's actually many more. And you need to be able to bring them all together and produce something which is this internal force. And then there are multiple different types of internal forces. It's quite complex. And that complexity is often not described, maybe to inner door students and so forth. But what I found is when I look at the way people perform their art, they've missed it because you can see it when they do it, right? So that's one thing. But I do know, like, I'll give a quick example. When I used to learn guitar, I learned from this teacher who was a phenomenal jazz guitarist. And I got to a certain place and I plateaued. I couldn't go any further. And I thought, as you do, "Yeah, well, he's not that great of a teacher. He's probably not that good at guitar, whatever." And I went to another teacher. Now, this teacher had been trained in classical guitar. He knew how to do modern electric. He was phenomenal at it, right? Soloing. And he'd been trained. He'd been specifically trained, unlike this other teacher who was just more like naturally gifted. And so once I got that specific training through the stages, boom, 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 I progressed past the plateau. And maybe a year or two later, I came back and met this original jazz teacher because he used to teach at my school. And we're just hanging out at lunch. And, we just started playing. I think I was doing some jazz chords for him and he started soloing. And then he did some and I started soloing. And it was a lot of fun. It was just like, yeah. And I was like, man, he's really good. Right. And I realized I was wrong with my thinking. I was just projecting that my insecurities or how terrible I was at that point in time onto him. But the truth is, he was really good, but he was just different from this other teacher, even though the other teacher was a lot better, by the way. But I would have never found that gap. I would have never bridged the gap to be able to play with him unless I'd taken that other route. And that's just the way it is. And I kind of see something similar here with, say, Chu Shong Tin. He used to be up on the rooftop, practicing for hours, and he was given some pithy comments to keep his spine straight and not use force. That's it, right? There's a lot more other stuff to go on. Now, he could have figured it all out via natural talent and perseverance, but we also know he was taught previously by a Tai Chi master because he was in bad health. So it makes more sense to me that he probably started taking some of those teachings and brought that into his Silnan Tao. I've never heard him say that, but really, based on his explanation of his Nimlik, it's the six harmonies. All right, so hopefully that chunk of information can help people who have plateaued or are struggling or want to integrate something back into their art. It's not a Tai Chi thing. It's not a Wing Chun thing. Got to go back to the root. It's the internal power thing. Now, there's another thing that's very important as well. That is what I'd call force flow generation, where you use certain biomechanics of your body to generate force. That's the way to put it. Now, a component of that involves qi, in comparison to jin. So I'm actually going to use English because I don't want to confuse people. If I say jin, or I mean actual kinetic force. Okay, kinetic force. That if you get hit in the face with it, it hurts. Okay, and then the other is qi, which is bioelectricity. And if you get hit in the face with qi, it's bioelectricity. Just depends, right? It's like what happens, but both have differing results on the body when you come into contact with them. And if we look at Chu Shong Tin, he had both, right? He often didn't talk about the qi part, and but there's a part where when it comes to force flow, the force flow travels through you. But when it comes to qi, the qi is just on. Just put it on, okay? And if you understand the separation of those two, and what I've alluded to in this this video, I'm sure those who have done the Chu Shong Tin lineage, it can really assist them in like bumping them up even further. If they train in the techniques that I'd been taught and am now disclosing on my site, you're going to go even further than that. Now, one of the things that's very interesting about Chu Shong Tin is he did discover a certain energy that resides in the body, and he knew that it was used by monks to keep their spine upright. But he's also taken that where he uses it to do that, as well as the rest of his skeletal system for martial generation. Now, this is the teachings of the Yi Jing Jing, or this guy right behind me, which is Bodhidharma. Okay. And in order to practice, say, Silnam Tao and to hit on that energy, it's a bit like a needle in a haystack. Let me be frank about it. The other is if nobody ever taught you these techniques, and I haven't even disclosed it in this, right? And I never learnt them from that school. Um, the neophyte has basically got a chance in hell, but it can happen. Can. Just saying it's very minimal. Now with Sifu Chu Shong Tin, it did happen. Okay. But I'm also curious about the students out there in Sifus. Has it happened to you? And if it hasn't, and it is something you're interested in, it's a much like my guitar analogy. I simply just had to go to another teacher, and they went, "Well, you just got to do this, and then you do this, and then you do this." And before you know it, you're progressing up on something that you would have missed because nobody divulged that information to you. Please don't take this that I'm saying that Sifu Choi Shong Tin was hiding things, or anything. It's not that at all. Much like my jazz teacher, just a natural talent is kind of how I read it. But I do find it very fascinating. I haven't ever seen anyone talk about it. And I just think it's about time I release this to people because I think we're all trying to be a Wing Chun community. And that school has definitely helped me. I have to, give credit where credit's due. It took me a while to figure out how it reintegrated with the additional techniques I'd learned, but I have those in there. But I also have a lot more, and I would love to share that with that school so they can also see the, maybe a holistic piece that they may be missing. Not to say it's Choi Shong Tin never had it. It's not that. It just may be something that's very difficult to convey or teach if somebody had just naturally happened to them because they go, it's just like this, but it never translates over to the student. So I've broken something down where we have things biomechanically and physically broken down so you really understand the structure of that, the energetics of it broken down so you can understand that, the mental components of it broken down so you can understand that. You can practice all these things individually, and then you begin to bring those Lego pieces together to build it up. And that's all I'm really saying. And I know that these things weren't taught. Um, and so hence I don't want them being lost. And if you're interested, please reach out, comment below. I also have the platform up, wingchunqigong.com, and feel free. You can sign up, take a few lessons, and it starts divulging all that information that will exponentially improve your Wing Chun. All right, thanks for your time.